Do you want to know more about weathering your freight cars? Why don't you stick around and watch this video and see how we do it on my N-scale monorail, the Sailor Secondary. Hello everyone, Joe from Central Jersey Conrail and N-scale. Welcome back to the paint shop. So this time on the paint shop, I'm going to be doing some weathering of some freight cars. So over the last year or so, I have been acquiring some new freight cars, mostly tank cars, gondolas, and reefers. So these cars have been on the layout for about a year now. I have been moving them around and just testing them out, and everything appears to be good, so I think it's time to go ahead and weather them. So I'm just going to get in the spray booth and we're going to do a quick weathering. I'm just going to concentrate mostly on using the new Iwata Airbrush and not using any other means, so no weathering powders or anything. Just want to see what I can do, and instead of my standard just one color weathering, I'm trying to experiment with layers of different colors and different shadings. So it's just going to be a quick video going through it, so why don't you sit back and watch it, and I'll talk to you afterwards. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this white door Conrail Boxcar, and we're going to, what I actually ended up doing was using both airbrushes, the Iwata and my old Badger 155. The Badger 155 I set up with the Model Flex sand, diluted with 3 drops of alcohol to make it flow and a little translucent. And I'm going to use that as my base coat. So what I do here with the base coat is kind of just fade the paint, make it a little more sun faded, and also take a little bit of the shine off of it. So now I'm going to come in here with the Iwata. The Iwata has 50-50 grimy black and rail brown diluted with some alcohol, and then I kind of stir it up a little bit. And then I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to do my detail work and my light weathering. Alright, so here we are going on to the next car. So we're back using the Badger with the sand to kind of lay down our base coat. You know, the little tricky part here is that both airbrushes are running off a manifold from the compressor. So what you have to remember is that the air pressure on one brush is the same for the other. And both brushes react a little bit differently to the different air pressures. So that's why you just got to remember to keep that in mind when you're switching back and forth between your airbrushes if you're using a manifold. Okay, now we're back to the Iwata and we're using that for our colored mixture. One thing I wanted to let you know is right now I'm running at about between 30 and 35 pounds on the airbrush. So that just takes a little getting used to realize how the paint's going to react through the brush, because, you know, it seems like every bottle of paint is different. So you just got to, you know, do a little bit of testing before you get into weathering your freight cars so you don't mess them up. because when I was doing the orange Fruit Express Reefers, I did run into some issues where the paint would splat out because I pulled back too hard. So it just takes a few minutes to get yourself set up before you do your run of cars. So here we're weathering the roof. When I weather my cars, I always take the time to make sure I do a good job on the roofs, because one thing is most of your viewers are going to have a top-down perspective on your freight cars, so they're going to see the roof, and I think a lot of modelers don't take that into account when they're doing their weathering. I think doing a good weathering on the roof really completes the car. This time around, I'm not doing anything with the artist oils I know I've done in the past. I'm just doing all airbrush this time. So when you're dealing with yellow and bright colored freight cars, it can make or break you. You really got to take your time because you can very quickly spiral out of control and overdo it and just make it look really bad. With this one here, this was a gift from Mike who visited the layout for an op session. So I didn't want to trash this car too much. I kind of want to kept it a little clean looking. So you got to walk that fine line of overdoing it and doing it the right way. Okay, so now we've changed over to the Iwata and we're going to spray our color. So with my covered hoppers, I always pay particular attention to the ladders and walkways on the roof. Even in the modern era, the covered hoppers have the walkways and ladders, and that is for loading and unloading. So, there's going to be personnel always going up on the roof, and they're always going to be tracking mud and dirt up there as well. So you want to make your running boards look like there's been people up there. So that's how I approach my covered hoppers. Okay, so I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Yeah, the chassis scheme is probably my second favorite to Conrail. And I realized doing this car that I don't have enough chassis cars. So I think after doing this project, I think we're going to go on a buying spree and get a bunch of chassis cars for the layout. Okay, so we're going to do 2 gondolas here in a row, so I'm just going to talk about it and I'll let you watch it. Gons. A lot of gons that are used are a lot of scrap service, and scrap yards are very, very dirty places, so the outsides usually get dirty, the insides get atrociously rusted and dirty. So keep that in mind when you're doing your gondolas. And I didn't do any kind of damage to the car, because most gondolas you see that are in scrap service, the sides are banged up from using front end loaders and whatnot. I didn't really get into it with these ones here, but I think that I'll be doing that more in the future, is going back and kind of wrecking up the sides a little bit. So just keep that in mind. Always concentrate on the interior of your gons. I do it especially because my loads are removable, so when the loads aren't in there, I don't want them to look unrealistic. Okay, so now we're going to do a tank car. So with this tank car, I kind of kept it simple, just going to do weathering. I didn't do it very much rust. Tank cars notoriously, from a railfan perspective, seem to have very particular rusting patterns in their paint. Not too sure why. Weathering wise, a lot of it is just going to be run down the sides because it's a circular top. There's no kind of roof line or anything like that. So keep that in mind when you're building a weathering pattern, is everything's going to run off the sides. So whatever's going to be on the top is going to be on the sides as well. Also, you know, I didn't put any kind of like spillage marks, you know, from overflows or anything like that. I kind of kept these very simple. Alright, now we're going to do some mechanical reefers. Pay particular attention to this car here. This is actually a Concours. Concours really aren't known for being the best running cars or even quality cars. However, I think with a very good weathering job and a well done weathering job, it can really change these cars and make them look so much better. And then by adding some trucks and the weight, their operability will be a little better. So my one critique of myself on this part is that I think I overfaded the reefers. I went a little too heavy on the sand. But I was able to kind of balance it out with the color from the Iwata. So as you can see from that last sequence, when you get your pressure set and your paint flowing the way you want it and you're expecting it, you can do some really thin straight lines with this Iwata. That's what impresses me every time when I use it. The roof line came out really good. Also, when doing your mechanical reefers, don't forget they're mechanical reefers because they have a small diesel engine on it. And those grates on the ends, always take the time to just do some kind of weathering to represent that there's, air intake through those grates, and it'll suck in dust and it'll be very dirty in that area. So whenever I'm weathering a boxcar, I always like to keep in mind that the door and the mechanism that the door slides in, there's always going to be a lot of extra weathering around there from, just the grease and the mechanical grinding produces like this just stuff, and it always runs out every time it gets wet or rains. So that's why I always pay attention to building those streaks there around the doors. wrap up this project. Okay, so there you go. That's how we did it. Yeah, great little afternoon project. Just sat down at the bench, had the string up on the layout here. I'm just grabbing them and taking them in the booth and spraying them. The Reefers, they didn't come out exactly the way I wanted them. I think I faded them a little too much with that sand. But you know what? It's okay. They're still great looking cars, and they're going to be a great addition to the layout. So yeah, with that Iwata, when you learn how to control it, it can do a lot for you. Mixing the color too with the grimy black and that rail brown, that gives you a real different type of color. It's what I'm looking for. I have found that if you don't mix it thoroughly, if you just put it in the paint cup, what I usually do is just measure it out into the paint cup of the airbrush, and I use my bamboo skewer and kind of stir it up. Not so that it's kind of like swirly, and you get different shades throughout the spray. So I kind of like that. It's different to get used to, because at some point you may or may not get the color you want. But overall, if you work through it with the whole car, I think it produces a really good effect, because you don't get that same color tone variation through the whole car. It swirls through the car. So yeah, really cool effect that I've kind of just figured out by accident. So give it a shot and tell me what you think. Yeah, just all I do is I put 50-50, 50% grimy black, 50% rail brown, put about 3 or 4 drops of alcohol, rubbing alcohol, to kind of flow the paint, kind of also thin it down a little bit, stir it up, but don't mix it totally. And yeah, see what you think, how that effect comes and works out for you. Once all the weathering was done, I was looking at them from a perspective, thinking, did they need anything else? Don't think they didn't need anything else. I didn't bother with weathering powders or anything like that. Tank cars, those tank cars already had the placards on them, so I didn't really have to do any placarding. So that's why I skipped that step. And wheels and trucks. So many people recently have been asking me what I do for my wheels and trucks. When I first started out, I shied away from doing any of the trucks or the wheels, even on the locomotives, same thing. With the locomotives, I started experimenting with disassembling the trucks and doing the side frames and then putting them back together. My thought process there was I didn't want any paint to get into the mechanism and gum it up so it doesn't run right. Then with the locomotives, I ran into the fact of the trucks never seem to go back together the way you took them apart. There's just so much going on inside those trucks that they would never seem to work right after you disassembled them. Now, with the freight cars. So when I started with freight cars, I had the same rationale. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get paint on the wheel sets because I don't want them to gum up and run real rough. Then I kind of just started easing into it and experimenting with it. I know in HO scale, I've watched many weathering videos where everybody takes their wheel sets out and they have the masks in HO scale. Haven't been able to find those in N scale. So it's kind of a little annoying to bring them out and have to spray them right. And honestly, lately, what I have been doing and has been working really well is just hitting the side frames of the trucks while they're underneath the car, letting the paint spray onto the wheel sets, and then just running them. And like when the paint is still kind of moist, run them, and it seems to break free any paint overspray. And I have not noticed any problems running the cars after that. I don't notice it affecting performance. So that is what you saw in this video. Is I just hit the wheels and the couplers with the paint as I was doing it, and it works out really good. So hopefully that answers everybody's question on what you're doing with your wheels and side frames. Early on, I know there was a lot of critique as, you know, your car, your wheels and trucks look brand new. It doesn't look that good. And you know what, I agreed with all the people who were critiquing that, and it just bothered me, so I have been going and adding the wheels and side frames as I do weathering. And eventually, once we get through the fleet, I'll go back and start fixing the ones that I didn't do that well. But with everything in model rating, it's a process. You just have to learn the process, you make the mistakes, listen to the people. I mean, I put these videos out there, everybody makes critiques. I don't blow off those critiques. I don't, all those tips that everybody gives me, I try to incorporate them, and it's made me that much better model raritor. So be very open and listen to the people around you who give you advice. Try it. At least try it once. That is the one thing I've learned. Of all the advice that I've gotten through this channel, I try everything that somebody recommends to me at least once. And has made me a better modeler, and I feel it's starting to produce some really good results. Okay, so that's going to put a wrap on this paint shop. Next paint shop you could expect, I have a very special project. Now, it's an involved project. It's actually a kit that I have to assemble. So I'm not going to put a time frame on it. It may be because of with the work that's progressing on the layout right now. I'm going to be starting to concentrate on a lot of big projects on the layout. May not get back in time. So you may have a month or two where you're going to miss a paint shop, but just know that I will be working on this special project. It's for somebody that I know, and when I do the video, I'll explain it longer, in more depth. So stay tuned for that. But be prepared. There may be a break where you may get 1 or 2 months where you don't get a paint shop, and that is just because it's time to concentrate on layout again. So otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for our daily updates. And otherwise, that's all I have for you on the paint shop, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.